Well, it's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you all for coming. We're going to have a very informal conversation and very unprepared, very spontaneous. So we'll see where this goes. We'd also love to hear from you in the later courses of the conversation and hear some of your thoughts and responses to this very unusual and interesting building. I'll start with a bit of context. I probably first came across Smiljan's work about 10 years ago. I was working at an architecture magazine, and I had a friend who was a Chilean architectural photographer, and he kept sending us these incredible photographs of these very idiosyncratic houses and projects in Chile. And every time we got one of these, it was kind of, when projects come into a magazine, there's always this kind of process of filtering. No way. And then, every time I saw one of these photographs, it was like, yes, we have to publish this. This is super interesting. And it was really, Smiljan was one of the first architects that kind of drew my attention to Latin America all those years ago, and I subsequently pursued that interest and wrote a book about Latin American architecture last year. And I think it's on the basis of this kind of long-standing interest that Hauser and Wirth were kind enough to invite me here today to have this conversation. And I think maybe one way to start is to think about where we are, which is a gallery in Somerset. And one of the things that struck me is that of all the Serpentine pavilions that there have been over the last 10 years or whatever it is, 11, 12 years, this is the one that feels most like an artwork to me, and it feels somehow appropriate that it was purchased by a gallery. And Smiljan, I wonder if you have any thoughts about the fact that this building appeals to Hauser and Wirth, the fact that this building has something of the sculptor's hand at work.
Always is this answer is really this question is really the people did often, but I always see these kind of things. I feel it's a construction more than art, more than architecture. I feel the limits right now around the world, it's really difficult in a small scale. I'm talking about. I mean, because when you, for example, when I try to work with a real artist, it's really difficult to put together a concept together. It's more easy to talk about a construction, a real object, and then you could modify, and then you could bigger, smaller. You could talk about the history of the materials, and you have something real. You don't have a white page. You have something that you could talk about it, and that is really important. I always talk about the buildings more than art and more than architecture, because buildings, everybody could do it, and everybody could, but the interpretation is not. Could be. I could not do it because I'm involved in that. Could be do it by the critics and other kind of people. But my way to report my relation with the artist and with the architect is about the objects and the buildings. And I because I really pay attention about the materials, about that kind of real physical things, and that is important for me. And then limits or how do you say?
Constraints.
Constraints. I mean, I don't know if it doesn't care, but they are not really important when you have to work with buildings. Mm-hmm. It's a different way to think in something when you have to be operative or when you have to think or critique something. It's another way to approach to the objects, and then for me, it's, I don't know. Could be, I don't know. I really don't. I'm not artist. I mean, I have a lot of friends artists, and they think really different than me. And then I'm sure I'm not artist, and that's great. I'm architect.
But it's unusual as an architect to be given a kind of carte blanche situation with actually relatively few constraints. In this case, it's a folly in some way, and. I think the challenge then is, how does one start? I mean, you're talking about being an architect. You think about very concrete things, very technical things. What was the kind of concrete technical starting point for this conversation that became this building?
When Serpentine curators Julia Payton and Hans Ulrich called me to give me the project of Serpentine, it was a really big surprise, and it's a surprise that you could not say no because it's a Serpentine gallery. You are far away, and then you must say you don't have excuse for to say no. You have to say, and you have small time, and you have 3 months to thinking in something, and you have 3 months to build that. And it was really hard for me and stressed, and was really hard to think in something really quickly because I really slowly. But you never start by zero. You never start by nothing. And one time was not the first project, but after that, after the second on the appear the materials and appear another projects that I did before this project, and they become to be enclosure in this pavilion. I work in several times with the idea of folie, and the idea of to give a strange atmosphere to the parks. I do a restaurant that work in the same line, but with other shape, with other kind of shapes, with some elements. I put some elements here. I have an isolated house in the countryside to do the same, and it was so funny because at one point we put together all of these things and appear this object and there's another reference that I work with history of that David Hockney drawing, some prints and that kind of things. Brother Grimm histories, I don't know if you know. And we did the first project about this history coming from 2010 when I was working with Marcela Correa and sculptors, and we made an installation for the Biennale of Sejima at Venice. We made The Boy Hidden in a Fish. It was an installation there. We started to work with this histories at that point, and that was really beautiful because open my work to some line that many other architects do it in the history of architects. For example, many architects thinks about the Temple of Solomon, and it doesn't exist, but they have to draw in, and they thought about many, for example, Arca de Noé, how do you say, Noah's Ark, and Scolari, that kind of people think about buildings that never exist, but they put together. And then my work with that history is to put in three-dimensional something that it doesn't exist, just exists in text. The text give you some lines that you could have to interpret. And this was about the Young Selfish Castle of Oscar Wilde. And it was so funny because it's a big history about it, but I made a model 4 years ago, 5 years ago right now, of this building. And this model give the line to build this building at the end. And then
so the idea
the process is not one line, it's really many things come together in a short time. Normally this is the same for the other projects, but coming more slowly, and that's more easy.
So this was an idea waiting for an opportunity.
Yeah.
It kind of existed in your head.
Yeah, I never work with when some clients came to me, I never beginning from zero because I'm not really smart to do something quickly and fast and to have the right answer to the right site and to the right client. I have 10 possibilities, and then I have to make some moving around the clients, around the site, and then, but you always generate projects, more projects. You don't have sites, but you have concepts, and you have plastics, and you have models and pieces of stone or something that you could use later. But I don't know, a lot of architects do this, and at that time it's not like me, just because It's more because in this kind of things that you could find more surprise. Because, for example, the computer give you the shapes and the things that the computer knows, you know. Mm-hmm. Don't give you a surprise. I mean, sometimes give some surprise because you don't know what they could do it, the computer. But the normal things, a bottle or a glass or the reflection on the water, give you some relation that you could find, and you say, oh, okay, let's go to work with this thing. It's more flexible and easy, I think, if you pay attention in that kind of things. I mean.
Speaking of surprises, you mentioned the Mestizo restaurant a second ago, and one critic described it memorably as Mies van der Rohe meets Asterix. And there's something of that tension or contradiction in your work where the kind of technical meets the primitive. And that's certainly embodied here. I think anyone who read anything about this building when it was published probably encountered several references to alien spaceships. I mean, between you and me, this is a real no-no in architecture criticism world. You shouldn't really. I mean, otherwise, so many buildings over the last 10 years are alien spaceships. So we always used to ban that phrase. But there is something of that, but with the kind of dinosaur's egg and then these kind of stones. Can you talk about the resurgence of the primitive in your work, and actually maybe in more than your work? It seems to be coming back in a big way.
It's funny because when I choose Folie theme, appear many texts about the Folie. One text is really beautiful. It's a Cedric Price architect, British architect, really important for me. Was because he said the Folie have to be false. False not in the sense, but false in the sense that you don't have to know what is real or what is not real. This is one character, and the other one, the architect who project Folie, the historical ones, the romantic one, have to have humor. Don't have to be really serious. Have humor. They have to be fun. They have to be, and in this case, the false is not false, and it's false because if you see this, you feel it's a really rough, but it's really high technology on back. I mean, it's not really easy to build this. They have to build a normal model, scale by one with a plotter, big one, that made in stage one in York. And they made this like a plastic, like a real plastic, like a giant made a real model of this space. This was made one by one, and that is really, really high tech. But at the end, I said, okay, but you must do it really bad. And my instruction for the English people, because you always have a really shining surface, really, really precisely, if you want. And I said to Ted, I remember, I said, please, I would like to come really bad. I mean, you have to be really strong and bad. And we was there to see this kind of bad dimension, because this is fiberglass, and fiberglass you could use for the boats, for the yachts, and then in that kind of surface you have always a beautiful surface, really, really. But I would like to have a contemporary material, but use it in a primitive way if you want to do. But it's not looks like primitive, it's not primitive. It's a high-tech technology with a raft condition, but it's something that is not usual to find all around. And then one of the characteristics of the Folie that have to be not usually to find it. I mean, have to be a Folie, have to give you a surprise. If you don't have a surprise, you don't have a Folie. You just have a pavilion, And the rocks is more. It's more or less the same, You don't know if they are suspended, and they have this because the problem of this kind of volumes is how to get the earth. That is the problem. That is how, if you want to produce that, you could produce just on the earth, I mean, on the terrain, or you could put it floating. If you put it floating, is how to get the real terrain. And then if you put just columns, you feel this is really maybe more heavy or unstable. If you put rocks, you have the contrast with the really thin skin and really lightness, and then you have these contrasts give you, for one thing, this appear more lightness, the structure, the fiberglass, but for other time, the rocks give you more, geological time, give you more time to the building. It looks like not really made in a moment, made in by time, and it looks like if you see these things here in front of the garden, you feel like it's forever be here. Means here it's really permanent building. I think there are many lines in that. It's not. I'm not really clear about it.
Clear enough. I mean, you use these rocks in most of your buildings, well, certainly most of your buildings in recent years that I can think of, and so now I understand that you're trying to.
But not always are in the same way. I mean, I use them 3 times right now, but not always in the same way. For example, in Mestizo restaurant, there are really structural ones, but really strong ones, and they sustain all the buildings. In another house, I put a rock in the middle of the living, but it looks like really solid, but you can move it. And then it's really solid. You have 6 tons of stone, and you could move it. And you could, if you have a party, you could have a long space. If you could block it, and then always I could try to do something, but I will never use the rocks again in my life.
Oh, really?
I finished. No, it's not finished. I just, it's really hard. It sounds, really put some rocks, and it's easy to do it, but it's not. It's here was really difficult because we had to go with Ted to the quarry to choose the rocks in the abstracts. For something, it's not easy, but you have to be really trust in yourself because the size and the surface, and there's a live material, they are not depend of the context. In the quarry, everything looks like really small, and you bring to the side, and they appear really strongest, and then you have to be really sure about the size and about the weight, about the surface, and we choose. Because all of these stone have more or less the same colors, this black and brown, etc. And we choose the colors too on the quarry, and it's not the sandstone. It's really unstable. It's not really homogeneous, and it's beautiful too.
I mean, it's interesting talking about the site because the next Serpentine Pavilion designer, Gascano, the Spanish architects. They said something recently about the problem of that Serpentine site, and they described it as a kind of, I think they used the words, it's a not very interesting garden.
Uh-huh.
And then suddenly it's transplanted here at the end of Piet Adolf's garden.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels almost like this garden was made for this pavilion in a strange way.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about the difference of it being here?
I don't know if you visit in London this pavilion, but looks like more small. The interior space looks more small. It's really strange. I feel really comfortable here because I have more space in the interior. You don't have more space. You have the same space. But I don't know why. Maybe the landscape or maybe something give you the opportunity to have more relax. I mean that part is. I feel that part like alone. I feel a little bit bad with that part of the pavilion because on the Serpent you always have people walk around and all really use it. And the other things that I think is changed with the Serpentine, it's on the Serpentine looks like more. The word is not aggressive. The word is like a surprise. It's like a real something strange there. I mean, the strangeness or strangeness. It was really important. And this volume was floating on the grass, but here the land is more or less the same pendants of the terrain, but the land is more flat, and the volume is more floating and then that gives you the sensation that the volume is more calm and comfortable in this space. It's a strange thing, but but it's not better or bad. It's another way to think in the same volume. I mean, it's not really common. Than I said yesterday, it's not really common that one architect have the opportunity to see the same building in two different sites, because it's because you feel the building change, because the sites change too, and and then you could prove the relation between them, the relation between the inside and the outside, and you could trust in yourself that you could do this, and it's working in different places. But the beautiful of the Garden of Piet here, that give a promenade, a really slow promenade with colors in June, with a beautiful moving, around, and then you go to the pavilion and you do this and go back. If you are here, you could not see the garden, and then you see, oh, I lost the garden, and then go back to the garden, and then could see better the garden. I think that's it's really good for both, for the pavilion and for the garden. I'm really, it's the best place that I could put it. It's a really good choice. It's a beautiful thing. I think on June with the colors and will be really. Here looks more, I could say, more calm. More.
And we've got these vistas cut into the shell, looking out at the rolling English countryside. And actually, you said something interesting earlier, just before this talk, about how you arrived at the idea of cutting out these shapes, and you were talking about pattern cutting in clothing, and you also mentioned Gordon Matter Clark, who, for those of you who don't know, used to cut into buildings and cut through buildings. And I hadn't actually thought of that before. So could you tell us a little bit about kind of cutting this building apart in a way?
I will. It's so funny because the more expensive thing here is the fiberglass. That is the problem, and the problem with the fiberglass was two things. When we talked with Tom Webster, the engineer, and with David, was this torus. The name of the geometry, torus. It's really stable. Donuts. It's a really stable. It's a really. But if you cut it, begin to be really unstable. Then, first, if you have this stable form, you don't need more. You have a thin skin. You don't need more really strong one. But if you cut it, the skin have to be wide. And then David said, if we want to keep stable this, we need more or less 40 millimeters of skin, and we have right now 12 millimeters more or less. I would like to keep the thickness, not the shape. I don't care about the shape. I care about the atmosphere of the inside more than the shape. The shape is nothing. And then I said, okay, when the model is fall down, you must put on a stick. And you put a stick here and put a stick here, because in Chile when something fall down, you put on a stick and everybody is okay, everything is okay, And then here we made more or less the same. And for Tom said, oh, may make sense, it's okay, and we did it. And then that was one thing. And the other thing was really important that Julie said, okay, we have this, but we have to. Julie said, it's still expensive, the budget is not, etc., and we have to cut it because I have to entry. I don't have entry to I have some tubes before in some models that you could see in the sketchbook. You could see these same models, but one tubes that you could go inside from a tubes. And sometimes I said, okay, let's go to cut the surface. We save fiberglass and we made the openings. But at the same time, I'm not really good with the shapes. I'm not really good designer. Elegant.
You're a modest man.
And then I got some shapes from Wirth magazine. I don't know if you know. Wirth magazine is a magazine to build clothes. It's a German magazine that in Chile every mother do.
For knitting.
For knitting, yeah. And this magazine have a plans like this with many drawings, and then you cut one of these drawing, you could isolate, and we apply into the shapes. And these shapes is part of one clauses of this Wirth magazine, and that looks so strange, but it's not my fault. It's Wirth magazine work, you know. And we apply to the surface, and when you apply to the surface, it's getting something strange. And then we moved the position, and we enlarge or reduce the shape, but we didn't manipulate too much more than and it looked like natural, you know. It looked like.
But you're talking about, for example, like a shoulder cut or something that would attach a sleeve to a trunk of a coat, that kind of cut.
It's more than when we're talking about the skin, we talk about, you know, with the engineer to look. That's have to, because I have a plastic with masking tape. You know, because it's the more easy way to do a plastic in 3 months really fast, and you could do many things. And then the beginning of this is a plastic, a model of masking tape. For this way to put the fiberglass too, and this put the way to and then, but we think to have really strange cutters here, but at the end with the plotter and when it's, and for the time, because the time we need to systemize everything, and was just this is cut in 45 or 41 pieces, and they put together in this place after.
You mean when you moved it from the Serpentine?
Yeah, to the stage one, to the Serpentine.
Yeah.
They cut it. They have 41 pieces, and they cut it again, and they put it again.
Yeah.
For this new pavilion have a new layer from outside. And then it's getting more green that you say before. I think I didn't see with real sun more strong, but I feel it's getting more green. Maybe because the grass or something.
But you can see the seams in the ceiling here, where the building was effectively cut up like a jigsaw and then reassembled here. I'm sure people would be interested to know how you moved this building from London to here.
They cut it. They cut it and they put together. I mean, with fiberglass, the beautiful fiberglass that you could put just with one layer, 2 layers. You could do whatever you do it, and they are really strongest and permanent. It's a good experience. I mean, but normally they hidden all of these kind of things. That's the surprise.
But you wanted these seams to be
exposed. I mean, I don't care too much. I mean, maybe with this light, I mean, when appear this kind of reflections or translucent, it's really okay for me. These kind of things, it's appear the material more alive. You know, more alive, and that is great. And sometimes by night, it's with the reflection of the light, it's the same sensation, but the opposite.
I mean, in a minute, I'd like to open up the conversation so that more of us can get involved. But before I do, I just want to connect this pavilion to the extraordinary drawing show that's in the gallery at the moment. I don't know if you've all seen it, but there's a wonderful drawing show of architectural drawings from Neil Hobhouse's collection. And I was wondering, Smiljan, since you've been around that show, whether there was anything in it that jumped out at you that helps create a connection between a kind of, you know, draftsman's architectural history over there and this very contemporary pavilion now.
If you see the exhibition, it's really, the show is really beautiful because it's maybe all of them are not building things. I mean, just models and drawings about the concepts and about and it's so funny because when I do this, the first model of this project, I never feel someone crazy, people going to me and said, oh, let's go to build this. I mean, I say it's something really, I do it just for joking, you know, something for playing. I think, and almost of them, they are really small things. I mean, the architect give the opportunity to keep alive in small things. I mean, small things in small buildings on architect, they are really removed sometimes, the architect, and that is really important. And the other things is, it's people, I'm really interested in the people who worked in the 60s and 70s and the beginning of 70s because they are radical architecture, the second layer after the big master, on the bottom of the big master, Mies, Le Corbusier and Louis Kahn and the other one. But I love this second layer because they give many conceptual concepts that you could apply, or you feel they are contemporary for us.
Is there a drawing in that show that you feel a particular personal attachment to, or was there anything in that show you could point to that you'd say that really inspired me when I was young?
Not one of them, but I really love the Natalini Super Studio drawing.
Mm-hmm. Which one? The continuous monument?
The continuous monument, because I have the storyboard of the continuous monument in my home, and then I have a piece, and I would like to vote that, and I could not do it 2 years before when it was selling. And
so Neil bought it.
Yeah, okay. they bought it, and but it's so beautiful because this is beautiful, and there's a small drawing about Constant that I love. Constant, the situation is of coming from 56 to 73 more or less. If left movement, political movement in architecture really strong, and they Constant make a lot of cities radical. He called New Babylon. And this city and this thinking about it's talking always about the nomad people walking around the cities, and I love it. I mean, I love this, but it's a small drawing. And what else? I don't remember too much.
Well, that's enough. We're lucky enough today to have Pete with us, who designed the garden, and also Luis, who designed the building at the end of the garden. And it would be very nice to hear from both of you, actually, starting with you, Pete, about how this pavilion changes your perception of the garden, and also, afterwards, Luis, about if you see any kind of relationship between these two structures.
Well, on itself, the garden was just a place to be in, and now it can be a corridor, it can be a place to be in, it has so many more possibilities, or I think the building in itself, because of its form, it's so nicely and so fluently floating above the garden that it couldn't be better in my opinion. So and the experience that people have when they come up. Some people were discussing the fact that this window was looking not into the garden, and I said, I can see that the architect or the artist probably has a meaning. He wants the building to come out or to be shown at its best, and he probably thinks of another direction, vista, which might be as interesting. So the landscape here and that window there, that is all away from the garden. I think that is better than just focusing on the garden, because the garden is interesting enough on itself. I think that's what is so nice of it.
I think that the position of that you're talking about, it's if you have this landscape around, keep the domestic space of the garden, keep this relation one by one with the garden, and that is really beautiful for the garden. I mean, you will see really by one. I'm really happy for that.
I feel it's not necessary to see the garden from this pavilion. Not at all. It's so clever and so well done, and so I'm so happy with it because I knew the pavilion by all the media and. But when Ivan said we're going to bring it here, I thought, okay, because I missed something. Okay, that was it.
You weren't nervous then?
Not at all. No, because I suddenly immediately thought we need this. That is because it attracted me so much as what it was, as a form, and also. For what how it spoke to me, I thought, this is what we need, to make the garden complete. And without it would have worked. The garden works without it, but adding this to it makes it more than than what it was, much more.
Luis, you designed the galleries and the existing kind of, you redesigned the existing farm buildings, and it's a very different kind of architecture at the other end of the garden. It's kind of almost Terragni style, you know, almost kind of neoclassical stroke kind of neo-fascist, very, very beautiful, restrained, and then suddenly this kind of alien primitive structure at the other end. Do you have any kind of interesting observations from watching this situation develop?
I think that this is, I think it's brilliant. I think it's, it brings to the project a new dimension to the entire site. I think what we did, and we've been commissioned to do the whole gallery. We tried to stay. We didn't want to do anything that it was going to scream, "I'm the new architecture, I'm the new space," and we wanted to stay within a certain language that cohabitate with the past and with the landscape. And I think then came Pete and developed the gardens. And I think that this is the opportunity, it's another hinge, I think, to the whole site to keep going. You know, it's almost like what we did there. It was more constrained, more in inwards.
Inside, yeah.
Where for us was the central space, the courtyard was the heart of the space, where we want to sort of like express all the elements like art, nature, and architecture. And then once we were outside, it was about Pete's space, and now all in a sudden there's a new building and a new architecture that again it brings for me a new hinge to new things, and it actually it's opening to the feet and to this reality, no, the English countryside.
It would be lovely to hear from some of the people gathered here, if people have questions or comments. Yeah, there's a hand up already.
I'd like to hear more about the Oscar Wilde text and how it inspired the building.
Oh.
So I don't think I know the text you've referred to.
The giant selfish?
The selfish giant?
Sorry? Selfish giant.
Yeah.
Selfish giant. Sorry. No, it's, I'm going to explain you. It's,
How did you come to that text?
you know, it's my favorite text. I don't know. I remember when my mother cut my hair when I was a child. They talk about the giant selfish. I don't know why, but maybe she wants to send me something. But I love the first page of that history. Just the first page for me is really clear, because always the giant selfish is really bad. Two things: the giant in the history of the literature, always they are silly, stupid, and always they are vencidos. How do you say? Vencidos? They lost the fight with the small people, you know. Small people could always, and then the John always is something. There is a beautiful text about Balzer, have La Passeggiata, the trip. I don't know how to. It's another John. The name is Tomsack, and it's the same sensation with the John. They always are. They are loser. I mean, they are loser. They are John, but they are loser. And then the history said the John selfish coming from after 7 years to talk with his friend El Ogro de Cornwalls. Ogre de Cornwalls. For 7 years, they talked for 7 years continuously, and came back to his home. And arrived to his home and feel the home is full of children. And then he put a sign and he said, "No more children, I have to be alone." But it's normal. I mean, that is really normal. That's part of it. It's really, I mean, I want to be alone without. For that, the winter is coming. Put the castle like a room, you know, like make holes on the winters coming inside, and never came again the summer. And for me, the castle, or the John Castle, is the prototype of a refuge. the idea of refuge, okay? The idea of a refuge of someone. And I always work in that kind of things and that kind of relation with to create in a public space or in private space the sensation that you could be refuge. You could be alone, but you could be with other people without problems. I mean, to keep calm. I don't know how to explain really good, but then I try to start to think how have to be the castle of the Jan Selfridge. And I got this model of the donuts, because the donuts is really conceptual one, because you have an interior, you know, that you keep for yourself, but at the same time you have a courtyard that could be for the other, use it for the other, and they don't touch it. You know, they are keep it alone. And then all of children's if you put in the children's Jan could be inside of this building without problems. And then this is for me, and that time I was joking, no, this is the solution for the Jan Castle. And then appear this model of Buddha and papier mâché. I made that. But it's and then when was the serpentine, we produced this, but at the same time we have to get entry. For that you have this in serpentine, you have this square that a lot of people was there talking, etc. And you have another ambience here. It's really complex. If you see the shape, it's really easy to understand, but you could see there, and you could see the village here, you could see people sitting there. It's really complex because the winter is coming and make a renation of the models. But that is the reference. It's about the refuge, the idea of a refuge, no, that was.
Yes.
I have an idea for a third place to locate this. So I was reading in the paper last week about Stonehenge, and there's a guy who has a theory that those structures were to support a wooden walkway that you look down into the middle from. So that's thousands of years ago, it's kind of the same idea. So from here it needs to go to Stonehenge.
I didn't know that.
Just to make it a little bit bigger next time.
Came past on the A303, just missed the opportunity.
The Stonehenge is not far away. It's yeah, but it's really impressive. I visited Stonehenge on last June. Was really impressive, really incredible. I mean, it's
apparently it was for a wooden walkway.
Yeah. It's
Just wondered, you've got this sort of beak lookout point.
There, yeah.
Yes. How did you conceive that? I mean, do you have a sort of organic reference for it, or is it just designed as a lookout point?
No, it's a language, architecture language. I will explain you. The archaic architecture, they never put two columns, in the Renaissance, before the Renaissance, they put two columns, but in the Renaissance was really clear because they have the perspective, and then they put two columns and go in. If you want to recognize archaic architect, they put the column in the middle, and that gives you the sensation of primitive. It's really the Ketglas. It's a theory that talk this about the Ville Savoie. In the Le Corbusier, in the same way. And then it's a language. I mean, if you say, I put the column in the middle, the rock, and put a sign on the top of this, and I say, this is the axis of the building. It's really classical, this. It's just, it's a symmetry architecture. It's really stupid. If the shape is really formalist, if you want. It's an axis, and then you could have a symmetry. And that gives you the sensation of stable shape. It's not unstable. You could feel this is okay. It's not fall down. It's like and then it's part of the language more than other things. And then this opening looks like to anywhere. It doesn't mean it's so funny because here you don't have bad views, You could see to any place and the views are really good. And then you doesn't care too much about how it was. You could not change from the Serpentine to here. I never know that the house in gonna buy this pavilion, and then you could not produce for two places in the same time, and many of the things that happen in here was part of the, you know, part of the lucky of the place, because the place is really good for anywhere. I mean, it's really good. And then,
but it's also a different language, that window, isn't it? I mean, it's a much more technical, kind of almost more architectural, like almost high-tech language than
that's
this.
Because I could do it a hole in there, but a hole it will be not an object, and I need to object to keep this access really clear. I mean, when we designed for the Serpentine, we said, okay, this will be the picture. You know, everybody will take this picture. You know, but this will be the focus. You always have to know how the people will recognize the object, how the public will be recognized, and for that we put this object. And this is one on the sketchbook. You will see this will be like this, and at the end will be like the beginning in horizontal, because it's more calm and quiet and less risk, you know. About
Oh, yes.
not so much.
The weather.
Not so much. No, but yeah, we think about the rain and etc. But it's a pavilion that's, you know, normally, and this is another, I think, not problem, but another idea of the contemporary architecture, that you always feel that any space that you produce, you could use all the year, you know? There are some spaces that you could use just on winter or on summer, but not all the year. You don't need it to have all the spaces all the year. For example, the park. You don't go maybe just on winter when a sunny day, you go to the park, and you go on winter because you could feel the leaves fall down and that kind of sensation. But you use in another way. And then it's important to have free time for the spaces. The spaces you don't use as the spaces. For example, the tea room and the Japanese culture. There are spaces for symbolic spaces, or spaces that you could use in one time and not time. And in this case, this pavilion was conceived just for summertime. Summertime that we know sometimes there are rain, but that's not terrible. I mean, that's the point. I mean, yeah. I have a house with a first floor with a tent. Yeah, we could use this space. This space is nothing. I mean, we could use many, like a studio, like a children's in the years. I mean, not at the same time, like a children's playroom, like a sculpture studio too, like a library, sorry. And but you could use eight months in a year, because on summer it's really hot, and then and then we know that the space will be useful for 8 months, but it's really cheap, and we could build really easy. We have a lot of problem with the neighborhoods, but it's another thing. And but my point is, if you don't have to use the space all the day, every day in a year. Some spaces, I don't know, never happened.
Can I ask one more question, actually? One thing I've never heard you talk about is this light, which, when I first entered this pavilion in Kensington, struck me immediately as, in fact, one of the most impressive things about this interior is this light, and one of the strangest, almost like this film strip. Can you just tell us a little bit about it? Like, for instance, what is it?
The problem is how to put lighting inside. You know, it's really it's not easy. I'm not really good in that kind of things. And then we said, okay, the best thing is to have a line, but this light have to be always turned on, because it's a sign of the promenade. You know, more than the light in an interior. And from outside by night, gives some translucent too, but really quiet, not really, aggressive, and really quiet. On Serpentine Gallery was really good, because you pass through the street and you feel it's still alive, the pavilion, more than to say, oh, look, I'm translucent, let's go. No, it's something really quiet to say, okay, there's something alive, it's still alive there, and we could see the pavilion tomorrow. And then for this was something that happened more than. And this is another figure of closest to net.
In what way?
And it's Wirth models, yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But what is it, organic LED, or what is the?
LED, yeah, LED. It's a new product made in German or something like this. No, in England. It was made in England, I think. It's I don't know. It's still working. It's really rough, but it's good. We want to move it on the space. I mean, not just flat like this, just like this. But we don't have time to produce that because you have to cut it too much, and the steel frame is not easy to resolve in few minutes.
Well, a couple of references that I heard before we came up today to this building were to both actually to do with humour. One is to the Flintstones cartoon. Are you aware of the cartoon I'm talking about?
Well, not really. Well, my relation with the rocks and that kind of things is a relation because my wife is a sculptor, so she works with big stones, and we go to the Cordillera often. I mean, riding by horse, and we always are seeing stones, and the stones give you the important things. Give you time. I don't care about the reference. It's not my business. You know. No.
You had a question.
Yeah. How did you decide to orientate the building? Is it anything to do with the light and the shade, or was it to do with the landscape?
Here?
Yes.
Here, and not really, but I think that the pit garden is really clear in the way to you have to move around it. You know, it's really clear that you mean clear mean not clear. And it's not simple. It's really complex, but it's really clear that you know how. And you arrive to this. I never thought too much about it. We thought in another position in the side, but we start here. Edward said me maybe there, and we finish here, and it was really okay. But because the language is this access was really easy to really clear for me to put in this position. All the holes coming just for the position of the axis more than, and I would like this idea that because if you turn around a little bit this volume, this space will be said no to the garden. I mean, will be a negation with the garden. And then if you have this space that is really important, you will see this space from the garden, and then you could be in that space to see in the garden on the bottom of the volume. And then everything was natural, if you want. I mean, you don't have too much choices. Sometimes you have to put it and it's be okay. I mean, it's not too much possibilities.
Yeah, the fiberglass, was that always a material you thought to use, or did you go through any other processes and end up deciding the fiberglass?
No, this is my first time. I think will be the last one because because it's not really easy. I mean, you have to find someone who want to build something like this. I mean, it is high tech. But I have some relation with the fiberglass because my wife work with fiberglass in sculptures, and then I know how to manage more or less the material. It's not really unknown for me. It's something that I do for 10 years or something like this. I mean, in another scale, of course.
Well, thank you, Smiljan.
Thank you so much for coming. Thanks a lot.